Welcome to episode 77 of New Hampshire Knits, a knitting podcast coming to you from the gorgeous state of New Hampshire, where our state motto is knit free or die. Today is Friday, April 13th, and I'm your host, Claire. This episode is sponsored by the Woolly Thistle. The Woolly Thistle brings your favourite yarns from across the pond and makes them easily accessible in North America. At thewoollythistle.com, you find the best of British yarns such as Blacker Yarns, West Yorkshire Spinners, The Knitting Goddess, and Jamieson and Smith, to name a few. You will also find yarns from Scandinavia, including Plötulopi, Rauma, and Tuku wool. At the Woolly Thistle, we encourage woolly wanderlust and we share information about where the wool was grown and milled. We specialise in finding yarn made at the source, whether that be on a wild Scottish island, or in the Devon countryside, or in the mountains of Wales. We find it and share it with you. With excellent customer service and beautiful yarns to peruse, you will love shopping at thewoollythistle.com. And of course, that's 2 L's in woolly. Let the Woolly Thistle do the international shipping so you don't have to. Well, how are we out there? I hope you're all doing well and have had a good couple of weeks since we last spoke. I hope you enjoyed the last episode with Susan Crawford and Sarah of Fibre Trek. It's been a really busy re-entry into normal life while not attending a festival in Scotland, but it's great to be home. Lots of great memories of being with fantastic people and sniffing, squishing, and yes, caressing yarn. Thank you, Mika and Joe, for putting on such a well-oiled festival that really engaged every part of my being while there in Edinburgh. It was wonderful. So let's get started, shall we? This episode includes On the Needles, Off the Needles, New Hampshire Knits Mitten Cal 2018, an interview with Felicity Ford, also known as Knitsonik and the author of the Knitsonik Stranded Colorwork Sourcebook and now the Playbook. I have a couple of announcements to make, a Woolly Thistle update, and then we'll wrap it up. So let's jump right into what's off the needles. Nout, nothing, nada. So that was quick. My projects are bigger these days, so there's not as much coming off the needles as I would like, but that's okay. On the needles are my mittens for the Cal, and those are the Christian Datter mittens by Scandiwork, who is Kristen Drysdale, and they're just beautiful. The pattern is really beautifully written, very easy to follow, and because it's a DK weight yarn that's called for, they knit up very quickly. So to my dismay, I'm only just now casting on the second mitten. And that's just because I don't have a lot of knitting time and everything is wanting to be knitted. And so everything just has to wait its turn. But I have cast on the second one and I'm working my way through the, she calls it, I think, the Norwegian Pearl Twist. I don't have the pattern right here in front of me, but it's like a Latvian braid. So I'm working my way through that and then it'll be plain sailing after that. There are some really good YouTube tutorials if you need a little bit of help with that. I find the tutorials very helpful. But yeah, such a lovely pattern, and she even includes a little backstory and a recipe in her pattern, which is just very nice. I really am enjoying that. So also on the needles, I have the Riddari by Veris Johnsdottir, and that is for Jay, and I cast on the body. I've already knitted the sleeves, and I'm just working now on the ribbing around the waistband. It's a bottom up, so not much progress there, but at least the body is cast on and I can grab it and get knitting on it if I want to. And then the thing I've made the most progress on is Magnolia by camillavadEinrum. And I'm knitting that with Einrum, which is an Icelandic wool. It's 80% Icelandic wool, 20% Thai silk. And this is a new wool to the shop and it's doing really well. So thank you if you are buying that. I think it's knitting up very nicely. It's kind of a strange combination in some ways to have this woolly wool that is, a rustic wool, and then having this silk wrapped around it. But it really does knit up to be quite a sophisticated looking fabric. I'm really pleased. The camillavadEinrum pattern is written for a strand of lamb's wool and a strand of mohair. And I did do a swatch with some mohair in it, and I showed that on my stories on Instagram a while back. And it's lovely with the mohair in there. But I decided, because I wanted to really see this yarn for itself, I left out the mohair. And I'm glad. I think it's looking really nice. So I finished the body. I've cast off the body now, and it's knitted top down. And it's a pretty simple knit, honestly. There's not a lot of, I don't think there's any waist shaping in it. And then you have the lace work at the bottom with some nups or baubles. We used to call them baubles when I was a kid. And it's just a lovely, lovely, simple, elegant sweater. So next I need to pick up the sleeves and start knitting them, and they'll have the same lace and baubles on there. When I try it on, it fits really well, but the neckband comes really quite high on me. So I've unpicked that, and I'm going to take it back and just have it be a much smaller neckline. I don't like where it comes up to. So that is the only modification I'm making right now. Yeah, so, 2 sleeves to finish on that, a body to finish on Riddari. I also finished the body on my car knitting, which is the Tidal Yarns sweater, one of her patterns. And that's a very vanilla, basic sweater. And I've knitted the whole body on that and cast it off. And I've picked up one of the sleeves. So I'm in the land of, what do they call that? Sleeve Island. I have lots of sleeves on the go and one body. But it's all doable. It's all doable. Not going to talk about my fantasy knitting right now, but I am crushing pretty hard for a pattern that I first saw in Amarisu. It was in the Iceland edition. So that was a couple of issues back. And I liked it when I first saw it. And I was looking at it again. It's knitted on DK, and I can't remember what it's called. I'll let you know all this next time. But basically, it's got a lot of cables being knitted sideways, I think, on the arms and across the body. And then you knit down in plain stockinette. It looks really nice. So that's a little bit of fantasy knitting. I want to do a colorwork vest in the worst way. Yeah, I don't have time. So anyway, at least I've got 3 sweaters on the go. That's plenty to keep me busy. So the New Hampshire Knits Mitten Cal, oh my, we're getting close to the end. In fact, when this episode goes live, we will be finishing the Cal in just a couple of days after this, because this is Friday the 13th. Ooh. And the Cal finishes on April 15th. So I will be tidying all that up and finishing it up for the year, and there'll be lots of announcements. So keep in touch on the chatter thread in the Ravelry group. We've got almost, at the time I'm recording this, almost 2,500 posts of comments. So the chatter has been unbelievable. It's been fantastic. And I just, really love that you are engaged and enjoying the Cal. So yeah, lots of finished objects too. So go look at those, put your own in, make sure you have everything in by April 15th so that you can be selected at random as a winner. I just announced the winner of the 4 balls of Jameson and Smith earlier today while I'm recording this, and that winner has been notified, and maybe I'll have time to squeak in another prize before the Cal wraps up. But anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for knitting along with me. Sorry that I haven't been able to participate more, but I have been checking in and loving things and just marveling at you guys doing such a great job of being good Cal members. So yeah, fill up that FO thread. Coming up next is my interview with Knitsonik, who is also known as Felicity Ford. She is the author of the Knitsonik Stranded Colorwork Playbook. The Knitsonik Stranded Colorwork Playbook is the exciting sequel to the Knitsonik Stranded Colorwork Sourcebook. In its pages, you'll learn how to draft your own knitted correspondence, to produce stranded colorwork bunting with your friends, to translate the textures of your town into a cowl, to experiment with scale and proportion when working with motifs, and to adapt and create a stunning shawl that will cover your shoulders with rounds of hand-picked flowers, featuring the voices and ideas of many friends from the community of knitters who already enjoy working with the Knitsonik system. This collection is full of fun, friendship and designs that invite you to play. So let's join our chat with Knitsonik now, and we'll see you on the other side.
We want to talk about your new book, but I would love to know a little bit more about you, your history. So how Knitsonik became Knitsonik.
Yeah, when I first moved to Oxford to do an MA in sonic art and composition, and at the same time I sort of was like, how am I going to make friends and where am I going to meet the quality women? And I was sort of looking around for things, places where I might make friends, and I saw this Oxford Blue Stockings knitting group, and I thought, oh, that sounds like a nice thing. And it was in a cafe and meeting every Wednesday, and I started going to that, and it just became this very rich time of studying sound and also learning about knitting. And I think the first time I really brought them together in a piece of work was I made a speaker sound system where I took 16 little miniature speakers and I soldered them all together. Oh no, it was 32, it was 16 in each channel. So 16 in the left channel and 16 in the right channel. And I soldered them together, and then I covered them all in I-cord. So all the wire was covered in I-cord, and the speakers each had like a little knitted cozy. And I hung them all up, and I was playing all these very sort of domestic sounds through them. And I suppose what I really wanted to do with that piece was foreground and amplify and celebrate all this everyday sound that's around us all the time, that we kind of just treat as like nothing. It's just like waste material. And I thought, you know, at that time, so like 10, 12, what year is it now? This would have been like 11 years ago that I was doing my MA, but I started working with sounds a few years before that. So like over a decade ago, in sound art, there were a lot of people at that time looking at the sound of the city, or like the sound of, like it was always about big public planning, kind of urban, even soundscape studies, which is sort of the study of everyday sounds, was very much focused on a sort of top-down town planning kind of approach, whereas I was just more interested in what is everybody's interior, domestic, intimate soundscape, and what can we do with those everyday sounds to celebrate them. And so yeah, that first piece of work, and I suppose knitwear has a kind of similarity to that, where it's like this thing that we wear and we use and it's practical, but it also, you can have a much deeper relationship with it than that. And so yeah, this first knitted speaker sound system kind of brought those ideas together. And what was nice about it was people were kind of going up and you had to hold the speaker up to your ear, so it was this very kind of tactile thing. And then since then I've done a lot more projects combining knitting and sound, and I still do quite a lot of projects that are mostly about sound. I was working on a map last year with Reading that is exploring the identity of Reading as a town, and also as a rural place. So it's like a town and country sound map. So I suppose a little bit like that sound work I was talking about, it's like very public and kind of urban and open spaces, but I still like sneaking into that kind of public sound mapping project, some domestic, like little everyday sounds. And I still and then I suppose I've done various commissions over the years, and become interested. The more I've got interested in knitting and textiles, the more I've got interested in how you can use sound to amplify and foreground and celebrate the places and the people and the landscapes and animals that lie behind textiles. So I did a project for Tate Modern where they wanted me to make a sound piece that would speak to Richard Tuttle's, it was like a huge fabric installation. I read all about this piece, and it's a specially commissioned piece of kind of viscose and silk that was made in India. And I said, well, the budget is not going to quite cut it to send me to India to where this textile was made, but I can learn about viscose and silk. And ended up keeping silkworms in my house and recording all the sounds of the silkworms as a way of like using sound to magnify and amplify our relationship to that textile that we use all the time.
And that's one of your podcast episodes that I have in my mind a lot. I remember that because I remember going, I don't know if I want to hear silkworms munching. What is she doing now? And it was one of the most, it was almost a moving piece because we went through the life of these little silkworms in a way that we don't usually think of things. At least I don't. Hearing is just taken for granted, and the sounds, and we filter things all the time, background noise. But we got to know these silkworms that you were caring for through the sound of them living and chewing, and it was a piece that has stayed with me for a long, long time. And that's what really excites me about your work, is you bring us these sort of aspects of life that either we're not exposed to normally or that we take for granted, and sort of puts it right there in a way that you're listening to it and you have to listen to it. And that sort of does things to your body. It slows you down, it focuses you on something. And if you're knitting at the same time, it's just the very first time I heard your podcast was when you went peak cutting and you had the crackling fire going. And, fires going, I live in New Hampshire where it's cold and we always have a fire. And that's the sound I hear every day. But your fire in that with the peat cutting took me right off to the islands where you were and a history and people. So, I'm really pleased to meet you. I think that you do excellent work. And I love that you've tied knitting in with, your sound work as well in such a visceral way, I think.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, like, you mentioned that thing about having a fire on that's in your house, and the difference between that and, like, the fire that's in a podcast that's being presented like this is a special fire. And I suppose with my PhD, I ended up, after doing the MA, I did a PhD called The Domestic Soundscape and Beyond, Presenting Everyday Sounds to Audiences, super wordy title. And what I was really thinking about a lot with that was strategies for how do you take, when we're just surrounded all the time by all this interesting stuff, what do you do to frame it and make it special in a way? And I remember in researching this PhD and thinking about my work a lot and stuff, I came across this very obscure website that had all these different recordings in it, one of which was like an Italian stovetop coffee maker. And I have one of those as well that makes it suddenly makes a kind of noise when all the coffee starts coming through the top. And I love that sound because it's the sound of coffee. But I was sitting in my room and I was like listening to these sounds on this website, and then my actual coffee pot started boiling. And suddenly I had this beautiful, mischievous thought of like, one of these sounds is an art sound and one of them is the sound of coffee being made. Which one is which kind of thing? And it was like this idea of like, actually all the sounds of all the coffee pots could all be an art sound. And if I just brought that same special intentional listening that I had brought to this recording to all those sounds. And so the rest of my PhD was really spent looking at exactly that. Like, how do I take something, turn it into, the nice thing about recording a sound is then you can share it. I can say, hey, I recorded this sound, I want you to hear it. And the various sort of little ways of doing that, and also through working with people and doing participatory kind of workshops and projects and stuff, you realise really quickly that people have a much deeper, richer, more intimate knowledge of their own sound world than you ever would give them credit for, or that they would give themselves credit for. So, for example, something I sometimes do in a workshop is I get everybody to take their keys out and put them down in front of them and close their eyes. And when you pick up the keys, the sound, everyone knows that's my keys. And you know the sound of your front door, you know the sound of your kitchen, the acoustic, like everyone knows those kinds of sounds. And actually there's a kind of, when you have an experience that makes you aware that you have that knowledge, then that possibility of all those things being special is always kind of there with you. You can never unhear it now.
Right.
And now next time you take your keys out of your handbag to like open a door, you'll think about this conversation.
Isn't that wonderful?
And it'll be like,
I'm back with you.
Yeah. And that's like, and I love that because I really hate this idea, and this was something I got interested in my undergraduate degree. I hate this idea that there's like the art gallery and that's where the special things happen. Right. And everything else is like drudgery and mundaneness. Yeah. I'm like, if we could bring the art gallery with us
How
as a state of mind,
is that? Yeah.
everything suddenly has this rich possibility. And I suppose then, because I had been doing this with sound for a long time, the more that I started working with, well, there's something about working with sound really also deepens your sense of place, because you start to realise really quickly, like I notice now when we go somewhere, this is like a place that has struck bells rather than rung bells, or this bird song is not the robins and the blackbirds that I know from my street, and the sound of the traffic is different here. And you kind of begin to, so there's a deep sense of place in sound. And when you work with sound, I think probably you could pick any medium, actually, that's a very everyday thing, and you would find like typefaces. The road signs have a different typeface wherever you go. But I think because my thing is sound, I got interested in this sense of place idea, and then I ended up doing a project called Listening to Shetland Wool for Shetland Wool Week in 2013, and really unpicking this relationship between the beautiful knitwear of Shetland and the sounds of that landscape that those textiles grow out of. And I suppose I started thinking, I'd also done a project in Estonia, and I was like, it's so amazing, these places that have their very distinctive soundscape, but also textiles that have deep and tangible tie to that place. And I was like, I've lived in a lot of places. I lived in Ireland for 7 years. I grew up in Croydon. Before that, I was born in Newcastle, and I live in Reading now. And I don't really, like, if I would say, where's my home in this world, I couldn't point to something and go, that's my place where I'm from. And I thought I really would like to be able to do a textile practice that would speak to that strong sense of place. But I don't just want to nick someone else's tradition.
Right.
And then I started thinking, maybe I can do something like what I do with sounds with textiles, and maybe I can start doing something that's about all the things that affirm my relationship with a place through listening. Maybe they can be done through sound, or through textiles. I've muddled myself up now. The knit and the sonic fully coming together. And so I started thinking, well, all my strategies for everyday sounds are about looking, recording, thinking, being present to, always being curious, never thinking, this might be just not special enough. Like, I'm never thinking that. All the things are special and magic. And then kind of thinking about how can I do something that I could knit from that. And through this process, I started working with using stranded colourwork to celebrate everyday things. And that turned into a workshop that I gave in Shetland in 2013 called Quotidian Colourwork. And after I gave the workshop, I said to a couple of people who were there, I feel like I've got a lot more to say about this. Maybe I should do a book.
So you had a feeling right then of a blossoming of a thing that was more than the workshop.
Yeah, because I had done all this, I'd really gone into this idea of how to take an everyday inspiration and turn it into stranded colourwork.
So give an example of that you used for the workshop.
So I had this amazing book called, well, maybe because we're talking about sound, we'll talk about my little digital recorder, which is a little plastic handheld consumer electronics product that I started using in 2007, and it's just got beautiful mics, and it was the first recorder that I really started using to record everyday things, and I just cherish this object so much, just because we've been on all these adventures together. I took it on the West Highland Way when I walked that with my partner. Every time we go on holiday, I go and record all the birds and the bells and the sea, and I've made tons of like projects and commissions and stuff using that. When I had the silkworms, what's nice about, I've got a bigger, more fancy recorder, but this recorder is so small and so robust. You can like strap it onto a tree and then just disappear for 20 minutes and come back, and it will have just heard everything. And I just love this recorder. But as an object to look at, it's like black plastic with totally worn down rubbery buttons and these two little inbuilt mics on the top. Like, no one who was doing a sort of traditional get creative with everyday inspirations type of book would ever put this kind of object there. But I found when I turned it to the side, you could see a pattern in the microphone at the side, there's like a kind of a grill pattern. And actually I got really obsessed with knitting the play, pause, record, stop buttons, but also getting the most, like in traditional Fair Isle, there's all sorts of rules about how much things should stand out from each other. But I really wanted my little play and pause buttons to be slightly indistinct, because on the actual object, all of those buttons are really worn down. And I wanted to, make some knitting that would speak to that. And it's funny because every time I look at that swatch, I just think it reminds me of all those adventures that I've had with the Edinburgh R09. And after I taught that workshop, I also made a swatch about the road, one of my favourite roads, the A4074 in Oxfordshire, and made a swatch about an old book, and even a pair of, like, when you first start knitting and you're just all about the variegated yarns, you can't believe that so many colours can be in the skein and they just look so awesome. And I think that's quite helpful for if you're working in stranded colour work but you don't know which colours to pick. If you can see how nice they look in that skein of yarn, they'll probably work in your knitting. Yeah. And so, I had this really old pair of socks that I made with Lorna's laces in Seashore. And I just picked out all the colours of those in the Jameson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight yarn and knitted a swatch based on that. And so it was all these very kind of everyday things. And
so you did that, and you brought that to the workshop up at Shetland Wool Week.
Yes.
In 2013?
2013, yeah.
And then you talked to a couple of people and you thought, there's a book in this?
Yeah, I just said, I don't know, I just kind of feel like I have a lot more to say about this. Do you think I should write a book? And people were like, you should.
Yeah.
And my partner, Mark, was like, listen, you're an artist, you got no money, I'm not going to let you, save up and, make a book that nobody wants. And I was like, that is good advice. So we kind of sat down and were like, maybe if I do a Kickstarter, that will first of all practically provide the money to make the book happen, because it's expensive to self-publish, and I knew I wanted to self-publish and did not want to try and find a publisher. And then I was like, it will help me gauge, does anyone want this book, or is this just a complete pipe dream? And the response to the Kickstarter was amazing, and it was really helpful also in helping me to gauge, people backed the book, but they also, through their kind of interactions with the campaign, really helped me to understand what this book needed to do and what it needed to have in it. And there was quite a bit of pressure in a couple of places for how many patterns are there going to be, and this kind of obsession with there has to be loads of patterns. Not from a lot of places, but I really realised quickly that the whole book had to be heavily weighted just towards creative process, because through the process I've just discovered as well that if you try and do everything at once, if I say to you, go away and make a sweater that's based on your favourite mountain, that's an insurmountable task. But if I say find one colour that's definitely in the mountain, cast on a swatch, make it this many stitches wide, then it starts to become achievable. And this is it's more of a tangent to the sound work, because it's not directly about sound, but because I work as an artist and have done for my whole adult life, I've learned so many really practical, transferable skills about this is how to manage a creative process. Most of it is just managing your own overwhelm and being excited about mistakes instead of being I'm so sad because my thing's rubbish and I'm rubbish.
I'm giving up.
The whole thing's terrible, which you could you would never get off first base as an artist, because you just have to make tons of mistakes if you're trying out new ideas.
But that's a really practical approach to take. You might have this idea in your mind of what this mountain would look like, but swatches are bite-sized, and it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. In fact, I think what you're saying is some good stuff comes out of making mistakes.
Our mistakes are amazing, and they're just great opportunities to learn. And so I wanted to make a book that really said that very clearly, and that also included mistakes and showed how and celebrated mistakes. Really wanted to give swatching its own space, because I think sometimes we're too quick to jump to what's the finished thing going to be? What am I going to have to wear? When can I wear this? And you're like, well, there's some stages you might want to go through. And so the first book was really focused on swatching. There were a couple of small patterns in there, but I really wanted the main meat of that book to be here's your inspiration, and here's how you pull out a palette from it, and here's how you begin developing patterns, and here's how you then kind of put those to use, and here's how you learn from yourself. And like I was saying earlier about people have a much deeper knowledge of their sounds than they usually give themselves credit for. People also are enormously, particularly knitters, have a deep, rich knowledge of colours. And I think sometimes, I wanted that to be part of it as well, just to kind of encourage people to remember what they already know about colours, palettes,
or just
patterns.
tapping into it.
Yeah.
So, and that was a huge success, a runaway success.
It was amazing. Everybody, I was so blown away by the positive response to that book. And I still meet people who say, I backed your Kickstarter, and I'm like, well, thank you so much, because it's been life-changing, and it was really, really positive. And I got to make the book that I wished I'd had when I first started out, thinking I want a way to turn this thing I see, how can I celebrate my favourite road?
Yeah, well, that's it. And so now on Instagram or on your blog and stuff, you see people who are doing this. They're still out there finding that brickwork or stonework or a dandelion in a patch of grass somewhere and turning it into knitwear, or at least a colour study and pattern study as well. I mean, there's so much in that. It's refreshing to sort of take the sweater out of this. We're going to really hone in and look at creative space right in this little swatch and see what we can do with pattern and colour and how you translate it.
It's so much easier because we're such great problem solvers with knitting, and we're so used to doing different stuff with patterns to make them just right for us. It is so much easier if you've already got a load of stranded colourwork ideas that you've come up with to find a way to fit them into the maths of something. I think doing it that way around is much easier than trying to second guess yourself all the time and be like, well, it needs to be exactly this many stitches wide, and it needs to be this many rows deep, and it needs to be, and then you've hemmed it in so much. Whereas just go and make a massive big swatch and try all the things. And make a mess and don't rip it out.
Keep it. Yeah.
It's learning. And that's what you're looking at, is learning.
And you use Jameson and Smith, don't you? Because we have such a wide range of colours.
I love their colours, and I also love the fact that they don't have fancy names.
Numbers.
Like FC11, FC24. Because I feel like the names, when you've got an elaborate name, it prejudices you. And people are already super prejudiced about colours and are like, oh, I hate yellow. But there might be a yellow
96
that they like. Yes, 96 might be just the thing they need.
121 is my favourite, actually.
Yes, that is, and that will stand in for a chartreuse in a lot of situations, because it has a kind of cool, murky, green banana-iness about it. Oh, it's a good colour.
Yeah, so many of them are. So what's the new book about, and how is it coming into being?
So the new book really picks up where the last book left off, in as much as, so in the book was published in 2014, so it's about 3.5 years later. I've taught a lot of workshops continuing to with this same idea of translating everyday inspirations into stranded colourwork. The same questions come up time and time again. There are certain themes and things that people like to bring in that kind of are recurrent, and I wanted to make patterns that would each be like a kind of canvas for exploring a particular idea or a particular set of niche stranded colourwork ideas. So there's a pattern in there that's all about scale and proportion, that's based on this idea of nesting dolls, like Russian matryoshka dolls, and it's 3 different cozies, one for a mobile phone, one for a mini tablet, and one for a laptop, and they each have the same number of dolls on them, but the dolls get bigger and smaller in relation to the size of the thing. And just like with matryoshka dolls, the small one has less detail and the large one has more detail. And I just was like, this is because very often people get stuck with, I've only got this much space. How do I still say that idea, but in fewer stitches? Likewise, how do I fill the space when I've got like a massive space? And I just thought that was a really playful thing. And also then if you're using those every day, they're like a constant reminder to you of those kind of scale and proportion issues. Another thing is that some people do find the swatches that are in my book, the first book, 48 stitches, wide, it's 56 including the steek. They're quite a big proposition, and I like having a big space to experiment with. But a couple of knitters, Yumi Shimada and Muriel Pensivi, who are Lavistrake and Yumi Ket on Instagram, started their own little project called Knitted Correspondence, and they've been sending each other like pretty much every month. They'll do like just a little swatch, a really small one. There's just like one idea that they've had, and they'll just have refined this one idea, and it's like a postcard rather than a novel or a letter.
Yeah.
And they have also built this beautiful social dimension into it of like things to share and present. Like I was saying earlier about sounds, how do you take something, frame it, make it feel special, share it with the world? And that's exactly what they've done. So there's a whole chapter of them talking about their process, and then some knitted postcard patterns. So that I'm hoping that bringing in that social dimension and the shariness, and also the smaller, less daunting swatch size, will kind of give people a slightly different angle on that. And then my friend Liz Ashdown produced this amazing pattern as a total surprise for my wedding. Me and Mark got married last year, and she was like, they need to have Knitsonik bunting to go with all the, like it was 100% wool themed wedding. Everything was wool. I had a wool bouquet, I had wool hair decorations. My dress was wool, everything was wool. My boots were wool.
Your guests wore wool.
All the guests wore wool. Our favourites were woolly badges. It was like maximum wool. And she was like, do you know what this wedding needs is some Knitsonik bunting. She has come up with like a clever way of doing this bunting. Each flag is made in a round, and it's got like a fringe on the side. It's a really fun kind of group project to make, to just get together and buy a massive stash of yarn and go, let's make a load of bunting on the theme of this, or to celebrate this, or to celebrate this. And the wedding bunting, people just did their own thing, and a lot of people used charts from my first book to make a flag. So, and at first I was really confused. I was like, well, my swatches have all been cut up. I was like, and then I was like, wait a second, Liz would never do that to me. I was like, and then I realised, I was like, no, they haven't been cut up, it's all okay.
My life's work.
I think my life's work. It's been going to triangles, just hanging from the wall. No, and I said, hey, listen, would it be okay? Can we come to some agreement that this pattern can go in the second book, because I really think people will love to make these beautiful bunting things, bunting flags. And we decided that to make a sample for the book, we should really speak to the amazing online collective Knitsonik Tarmac Tuesdays project. So where in the first book, where I had the whole swatch about the A4074 road, I gave a very silly half talk about the book, half stand-up comedy talk here at the Edinburgh Yarn Festival in 2015. And I did this whole bit about tarmac, and how my big creative breakthrough on the swatch about the road was realising that tarmac is just loads of different colours. It's not grey at all. And as I had a spoof prize of some framed pictures of tarmac of the many hundreds that I took in the course of working on that book. And Coranda Berry and Gemma Dudley, I think, were in the podcast lounge, and they came up to me and they said, we've come up with this brilliant idea, Tarmac Tuesdays, on Tuesdays, picture of tarmac on Instagram. And over the years, this has just become...
It's like still around, and
it's still around, and it's like, it's my happy place. And what I was saying about sounds, about the art gallery, taking the art gallery around with you everywhere, my favourite thing, hands down, about that first book, the Knitsonik Stranded Colorwork Sourcebook, is that people still message me and say, or I see on Instagram, someone's sitting at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and then they've noticed that there's like a leaf on the tarmac and it looks nice, and they took a picture and it's made them think about colours. And I just love the idea that previously dead time, where things were boring and it was just like, I'm just going to go on my phone and kill some time, has now turned into like, ooh, maybe there's something of wonder or of value or beauty here. And once you've done that, you never feel the same about that place. That's always the special bus stop now where I took the picture.
Giving me chills.
Yes. And so I really wanted to, and the Tarmac Tuesdays project is a super example of that, where people just keep uploading, and the artistry of people's pictures, how they frame them, what they put in shot, what they don't. And because it's gone on for loads of years now, you see the passage of the seasons, you see the blossoms, you see the grasses and weeds in summer, you see snow and leaves. And it's just gorgeous. And I was like, no, because this is about group projects, one of my favourite Knitsonik group projects that so many people participate in is Tarmac Tuesday. So there's bunting themed around Tarmac Tuesdays. And then there's a cowl. In the first book, I was looking a lot at the brickwork of Reading. There's very beautiful decorative brickwork in Reading. And I ended up, there was one idea that I really liked and I wanted to do more with it. And I was looking at, very often in my workshops, people will come up with one little really simple pattern that they found in their inspiration source, and they'll be like, I think I just need to do more of this pattern but try different colours through it. And I wanted to make a pattern that would speak to that, because that is a completely valid and often very rich and rewarding approach to kind of ending up with something that you can wear. And I just wanted to offer a pattern that would let you in a very modular way do that. So yeah, it's a kind of cowl called Bricken, which means made from bricks, and I'm very happy because we've got lots and lots of photos of glorious brickwork into that chapter. Like, so there's these 5 kind of main patterns, but each one of them in the book is more like a project, in that I've provided masses of kind of support literature, notes, tutorials, links to things, so that they're all geared towards make this yours, do your own thing with this, bring in your own patterns. And I've tried to use a common maths across it, because the common factors are our friend with stranded colourwork. And I also decided to make a colouring book that goes with it, because it's really annoying once you've got your motif and you know exactly what the shapes are that you're going to be knitting. It's very annoying to have to plot them on squared paper each time you want to kind of, like, finding each of the squares and colouring them in and outlining them takes forever. So I've made these very kind of simplified drawings, and simplified drawings of the schematics as well, so that you can quickly get a rough impression. How's it going to look when I sequence my patterns through the garment like this?
That sounds great. So what's the name of the book?
It is the Knitsonik Stranded Colorwork Playbook. And it is currently available for pre-order.
All right, that's great. Well, thank you very much, Felicity. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Thanks
and
so
talk
much
to
for
you.
having me.
Thanks for telling us all about it.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Felicity. She is a lovely person, and I've waited years to get time with her. I've always seen her at Edinburgh, and we can wave and nod at each other, but it's always flying by and never quite meeting properly. So I thank her very much for taking time to talk to me. Quick announcement. I wanted to share with you the Northeast Hand Spinners Association, the NHA, which is a New England organization serving New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And I was contacted by a friend about this because they are going to be having their gathering, which will take place at the Radisson of Nashua in Nashua, New Hampshire, on November 2, 3, and 4, 2018. Some of the highlights include Ulla Bauder and Dawn Wimbrow, who will teach rigid heddle weaving, which I think would be really cool. Gail Callahan, the kangaroo dyer, will teach a colour dyeing and one indigo dye class. Abby Francamont is putting together some new classes on spinning and will also be their keynote speaker. Bristol Ivy will be teaching 3 knitting classes. Wendy Jensen will teach 2 basket making classes. Donna Kay will be there and has a new class on working with raw fleece for spinners. So there's a lot more than that too, but that's some of the highlights that I wanted to share with you. If you want to find out more information about that, go to www.nehandspinners.org and be sure to follow Northeast Hand Spinners on Facebook and Instagram at Northeast Hand Spinners. And Northeast is spelled out, no abbreviations. Okay, so yeah, check that out if you're interested in going. It sounds like a really good time, especially for those of you who like to spin. Oh, another quick announcement, and this is really just something that caught my eye on YouTube. I came across a BBC show that's on there called A Stitch in Time, and it's a really quirky take on fashion history where they choose a picture or a portrait from Western art in a historical context, and then they look at the fashion in that painting, and then they recreate it as it would have been created during that period. And the host is very quirky, but it's fascinating. And the shows are very short, maybe 25 minutes. But there's a good 6 or 8 of them in the first season that I have found. So I wanted to let you know that's A Stitch in Time on YouTube, and it's a BBC TV show. Now it's time for the shop update. Thank you as always for all your support. The Woolly Thistle is doing great and keeping me very busy. I am actively looking for a part-time helper. So if you know anyone in the New Hampshire area, you can let me know by sending me an email and I will speak to them directly. So thank you. The shop is doing great. I wanted to let you know that I'm going to be vending in June at the Squam Art Fair. I went to this last September to check it out, and I have been accepted as a vendor for their next event. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to let you know I've changed my packaging to Eco Enclose, which is a company that deals in recycled plastic. So your mailer now that you get your package in will be 100% recycled, and it's recyclable, and of course it's reusable. So I got new bags that are biodegradable basically, and most of the orders will be going out in those. And over time I will work to replace all my bags with these. Really happy that I was able to do that. So a quick shop update. Rama was updated recently with lots of new colors, as well as Strick Yarn, which is their DK weight. It's a 3-ply, and that's doing really well. I just got in some basic shades for that, and if you would like me to get in a particular color, then just send me an email and I will see what I can do. The color cards for Fennel Yarn came and went, but I'll be getting more, and yeah, I'm quite happy to keep stocking up on these shades for you. So let me know if I'm missing something that you would like. Tuku wool, more is coming. I'm actually quite well stocked in Tuku in both fingering and sock yarn. There are some colors though that I was low on, so I'm getting more of those in. There are a couple of colors that even Tuku is out of. Basically O2, which is the light grey, and H27, which is the navy blue in the fingering. I just can't get them. But everything else I have in stock. John Arbon. So this is the Knit by Numbers DK, and I'm probably about 4/5 of the way through of receiving this massive order. And once I get the last lot, which is being milled as we speak, then they will get that shipped to me. And I am working now on getting all of that photographed and into the shop, and we'll be ready for a gigantic release soon. So we still got a little ways to go on that because we're waiting for the mill, but it's gorgeous. It's beautiful merino, 100% merino, organic merino, milled by John Arbon in Devon. So a really nice yarn, lots and lots of colors, lots of different shades of those colors. And I think it's going to be great for crocheters out there who like to use a lot of different colors, as well as knitters. So I'm excited about that. I put some Berlin yarn kits in the shop. There was the Macher Wildflower kit, which is a beautiful shawl in the Moor colorway, and there was a cowl called the Sea Cast cowl, and that was in the Reef colorway, and both of those got snapped up very quickly, so I'll see if I can get more of them in. Uist wool, we're on the last available supply of that right now. I still have a little bit of Eason in stock, which is the lovely buttery yellow cream yarn. It's really very nice. So there's maybe 5 skeins of that left, and that's it. But that's enough for a sweater, guys. It's DK white, and I'm hoping to get more Uist. We'll see how that pans out. Blacker, we have lots of classic DK and 4-ply, lots of Samite. If I don't have the shade in stock in Samite, that means Blacker is out of it too, so I can't get it. Lioness is being filled up. I'm going to have lots of new Lioness in both 4-ply and fingering. And of course, Lioness is the 50-50 linen wool blend. It's a beautifully soft yarn. I'm not a fan of knitting with plant-based yarns. I find they hurt my fingers, but I've knit quite a bit with Lioness, and because of that high wool content, it's really not too bad on the hands at all while knitting. And of course, linen just gets better with time. And I particularly like the colorways they have in this. They're not a sweet pastel shade, but they're more a dusky pastel, if that makes sense, and just very lovely colors. So I hope you'll go look at that. We have lots of their Hebridean mohair, which is the mohair blend. Lots of that came in, and you guys are loving that for socks. I did see on Blacker's Instagram recently that they were touting the use of this yarn for sweaters as well, and that's a really great point. When I was at Edinburgh, I met with Katie from Blacker Yarn, and she was wearing a gorgeous sweater that was knitted in one of the green mohair yarns, and she had actually mixed it with another ball of mohair, just straight up mohair, so it was fuzzy wuzzy, and the color was terrific and it looked really good on her. So don't think this yarn's just for socks, even though we are excited to knit socks with it. It's good for garments as well. I'm getting lots of requests for Tamar and Swan and Gotland, all Blacker yarns, and what I have is what I have. Blacker is quite low on some of their lines right now, and we're waiting for things to get milled up again. West Yorkshire Spinners, the floral collection's doing great. Thank you for that. The Country Birds got very low along with some of the solids, so I just put in a large order with them, and that will be coming over soon. Jameson and Smith is well stocked. The Peary Fleur kits, I put some more in just the other day and they get snapped up. I didn't even mention it on Instagram and they were gone. So I am getting lots more yarn to make up those Peary Fleur kits, and they're really nice. It's enough yarn to make a Peary Fleur. You get a lovely set of floral stitch markers and you get a Woolly Thistle tote bag. So it's a good deal. I finally got Erica Knight's BFL in the shop. This is called 100, and this is 100% BFL from Britain and milled in Yorkshire in England. And it is soft and gorgeous, and I've sold quite a bit of that since that went live. So thank you for that. Check it out. It's a really good yarn. And I also made up some baby knit kits with her cotton line. There's two kits. One is called Bubble and Squeak and one is called Jammy and Dodger. And both of those give you everything you need to complete knitting those gorgeous little garments that were written for the yarn. So yeah, those are good. Woolly Mammoth, we launched that and that flew off the shelf. So we love Woolly Mammoth here. There's still a little bit in stock, so don't wait too long. I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get on her books for another round, but I'll certainly work on that. She's lovely to work with and she makes beautiful yarn, all naturally dyed. Frangipani's picking up. Lots of frangipani going out the door, and many of you are buying 2 cones because that's how much you need, but of course then you get free shipping. So that's good, and I have a new order in with them to top up my stock. I got a great story from a customer recently about how she knitted a sweater, a Ganzi. I think it was her first sweater in frangipani, and it was in the Aran colorway, which is a cream. And the day she finished it, her husband spilled red wine all over it. And she tried lots of things such as OxyClean to try and get the stain out. Of course, then she read that you shouldn't use OxyClean on wool. She took a scrubbing brush to it and she scrubbed the daylights out of it. And finally, I think she just put it in some soapy water. I can't remember the exact details, but the red wine lifted out and there's not any sign of the wine or the scrubbing on the frangipani. And that's a few years ago now. Her husband's still intact because it all worked out, and the sweater is as good as new. And she sent me that email to tell me just how great frangipani is. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, in books, we have Marie Wallen's Shetland book back in stock. That was sold out for a couple of days, but they're back in stock. The Vintage Shetland Project by Susan Crawford is expected in the shop today. I'm waiting for that delivery, and it is scheduled for today. So as soon as they come in, we will be getting all those pre-orders out to you. We're expecting many more copies of the Vintage Shetland to come in. So if you're interested in having a copy, the best thing you can do is go to the product page in the shop, the Vintage Shetland Project page, and click on the green button that says Notify Me. And when it comes back in stock, you will be the first to know because you will get an email. I may do another pre-order for the next round because I'm not sure when the next lot will get here. And if it's going to be a wee while, we'll do pre-orders to make sure you get your copy. 60 North is a magazine published by Shetland Heritage out of Shetland, and I got a small supply of them and they flew off the shelf. This is a really nice magazine. First of all, this issue is a double issue, so it's just packed full with really great articles. It's made on nice paper and really high quality and not very expensive. So it's worth buying from me at this rate because I think the shipping to get it to you on a one at a time basis is quite expensive. So more of those are coming and they'll go in the shop just as soon as they get here. I just put in the shop the Learn to Crochet project by Joanne Scrace and Kat Golden. And this is a lovely spiral bound book. So it lays flat when you open it. And it takes you from soup to nuts in terms of learning how to crochet. The book is written with British crochet terminology, but there is a full discussion of US terminology, and the US equivalent is given throughout the book. So I think it's quite friendly for us here in the States. And the other new book I just put in the shop is A Year of Techniques by Jen Arnall Culliford. And this is the lady I met in the bathroom at Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I'm like, ooh, I just stocked your book. So yeah, she was very, very nice. See, when you go to Edinburgh, you just meet the most famous people. Yeah, so this is a lovely book full of techniques that take you through things like intarsia, afterthought heels and thumbs, color work, and garter stitch short rows, knitting on edgings, dominance and ferrule knitting, pinhole cast on, steeks and turning heels. All the good stuff is in there. So if you know someone who's just starting out knitting, or maybe you yourself want to brush up on some techniques, this is a lovely book to do that. Just want to mention that Making 5 is now in the shop, but it's not going on sale until April 20th. That is its release date. But I have a copy, or I have lots of copies, and let me tell you, it's very beautiful. This is Making number 5 color, so it's all about color, and it's a very, very nice magazine as always. And I wanted to let you know that the Woolly Thistle does have a full page ad in there, so see if you can find it when you get your copy. So yeah, I think that's all that's new in the books for now. Just keep an eye out for the Vintage Shetland project coming back, being made available again. Lots of exciting news on that to come very soon. So just keep your eye on the Vintage Shetland project being available again. Make sure you sign up for the Email Me so that you know as soon as it goes in the shop. And there's lots of exciting things coming down the pike. So I will leave that all for another day, but I think that's everything for the shop, and I think that's the end of this episode. So if you go out, take your knitting. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to New Hampshire Knits. You can find the Ravelry group at NH Knits. You can find me on Ravelry as NHK Claire, on Instagram, NH_knits, and you can email me at nhknits001@gmail.com. And you can find the Woolly Thistle all over the internet at the Woolly Thistle with 2 L's in Woolly.